All right. Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. In this tutorial, we are going to be building a blackjack game. Kind of the main things we'll be looking at is making API calls as well as using conditional statements to check if certain conditions are true or not so that we can manage the rules of the game. All right. I'll show you the basic game. So we have a button that says hit me. When we click it, it gets a card from an API and it calculates how many, whether it's under 21 or 20, if it's less than or equal to 21. If you go over 21, then you get a message saying that you've gone bust and that you should try again. So that you can try again and gone bust. Okay. So let's have a look at how we could build this. Let me. All right. Let's quickly paste the HTML in there. Right. So we've got a message that says you've gone bust and a button to try again. And we have a hit me button and a place where we're going to place our cards. I'll just quickly add in my CSS. It's pretty simple. I have a body that I've set a font on, just kept the main in the middle of the page, added a bit of styling for the button, added a pointer on hover so that when you hover over it changes the cursor, and then place the message in the middle of the board, and I've hidden it for now. Okay, so that's kind of the HTML and CSS. We're going to get on to working with the API now. So this is the API. I just Googled deck of cards API, and this is the one that came up. A very well named site for exactly what I searched for. So the way that the API works, so my advice for everyone when you are working with an API is go and read the docs. I often get students saying, I don't know how to access something. And it's often because they haven't read the documentation to see how it works. All right. So the way that this API works is that you can get a deck. So you search for a deck and it gives you back a deck ID. All right. And then you can use that deck ID to know which, to draw a card from that deck. All right. So it gives you kind of your own unique deck to work with. And then you can draw a certain amount of cards. So here it's saying I can draw 2 cards from this with this deck ID, right? So if I look at the API here, I get back this deck ID that I can use. And I can then draw a card from the deck. I just need to replace this where it says deck ID. I need to use this deck ID here. And let's pop that in there. Okay. As you can see, it's given me an array of cards. And there are 2 items in this one. I could drop that down to 1 card. Sure. And there I get 1 card. That'd be great if the API had to go down. All right, so that's how I can get 1. You can see that it's actually given me a list of remaining cards. So there's 52 cards in a deck. I've already asked for 2, and now I've asked for another one. So I'm down to 49 cards left in the deck. Right, so if I had to update that, it tells me that I've got 52 for this unique deck. So it's created a new deck for me. But if I'm just using this ACI deck, there's only 49 left there. So it just allows you to be able to not repeat the same cards in your deck. Okay. So the first thing that we need to do is we need to get this deck ID that we're going to be able to use here. So I'm going to say deck URL, and to get the deck, right, I only need one, and as you can see there, it's got a parameter. So if I needed multiple decks, I could change that to be, I don't know, 2, 4, whatever, but we just need one. And so I'll just copy that URL. And then I'm going to create an async function to make a call to this endpoint and get my deck ID. So I'll create an async function. Let's call it get deck. And so that's now fetching from this deck URL, so this endpoint here. And I then need to create another variable, call it deck details. And we'll say await response JSON. Right, so we're just turning our response into JSON there. And then we'll just log that out and have a look and see what deck details is now. Whoa. Right, have a look in the console. Right. Just needed to change so that it'll run. Will you run now? Oh, I need to call the function. Cool. Now I'm calling the function and I get back my object and I get this deck ID that I can use, right? So I just need to create a variable for that. If I create the variable inside of this function, if I create the variable inside of this function, then I can't use it outside of the function. So I'm going to create a variable outside. And then I'm going to set this value to be, the property is deck ID. So let me just quickly show you deck. Right, so now I'm just logging that out and I just get that. So I can now set my deck ID to equal deck details. All right, so now I've created this variable deck ID. Now I can listen for a click on this hit me button, and I'll then run a function to go and fetch a card from the API. So let's create a, let's call it hits button. And I've given it a class of hit button there. And we'll just say hit button dot on click, and we'll run an async function, and we'll create a new card URL, and that will be this URL where we can get an individual card. But instead of having this set here, we need to use a variable, and the variable is this deck ID that we've created. Right, then we do the same fetch as we did here with the card URL now. And we can call this card details. Or maybe let's call it card. Right, and we'll log that out. Okay, now if we hit that, we now have made a call to this endpoint with our unique deck ID. And we get back that it's a 7 of hearts. There it gives us a value of 7, suit, hearts, and also quite nicely gives us images that we can use. Okay. So now we're getting individual cards. So again, if I click the button, I now get a new card. This, right. Now I get the 8 of diamonds. So that's great. Now what we can do is we can start adding them to the cards page. To the cards container. Let's call it cards container, and it's got my ID of cards. And we are going to add in our image. So and if we just quickly look at the, oh, actually we've already still got it in our console here, so we can just have a look at how the data is set up. So you can see that the value of card comes back with this object, and the object has properties success, deck ID, cards, which is an array, and remaining. Okay, so I'm going to get the cards property. And for me, because I'm only getting one card at a time, I'm only just going to access the first element inside of this cards property, right? So let me just quickly show you here. Let's keep logging this out. Card.cards, right? That's the name of the property of the array. Right. I need to click the button, obviously. Wait, so if I just first access the, right, so I first access the array, and here's the array, but I know that I'm only getting one item back from my array, so I don't need to loop over it. I often see students where they only want, say, the first image, right, say on like a products page, and they only want the first image in the array anyway. I often see them looping through it to still access the first item. But if you only need the first item and you know that you only need the first item, you can just use square brackets, and item at position 0. So again, if I hit that, then I get this object here, and I want to add the image. So I'm just going to quickly create a variable for this. Okay, and then I can add card details dot image, and now let's see what's going wrong here. How do I inspect it? Well, obviously I'm not using the variable. Sorry, guys. Okay. So now it's showing the image for the cards. I'm just going to add in some alt text here as well. And I can't remember what let's call it. Right, we'll call it value of suits, right? So let's say card details dot value of card details dot suits. Right, so that just gives us better alt text, right? So if we now look in the HTML, it says there 4 of hearts. Okay, so if a visually impaired person wanted to play along with this, they'd at least know what the cards are saying, which I think makes sense. Okay, so now we can click and we can add as many cards as we want to the page, but there's no rules in place for what needs to happen. Okay, so the way blackjack works is you need to stay under 21, and if you go over 21, then you are bust. Okay, so what we can do is we can create a variable here, and we'll have total equals 0. And what we can do is, if you look here, you can see that there's a value. Let me run this again and we'll see when we get a number, right? So you can see that we get a number. And so if it is a number, we can add that directly to our total. And if it's a jack, queen, king, that counts as 10. So we need to look out for that. All right, so let's handle that one first. So we'll say that if card details dot value, let me just quickly log this out so we can see what's happening. Console.log. Right. Okay, so I'm just checking now. If card details dot value is equal to queen, then just log out. You got queen. Okay. Clear that. Hopefully we get a queen soon. Otherwise, this could be a while. No such luck. There we go. I got queens. Right. And there it said, you got a queen. Okay. But now instead of it saying you got a queen, what we want to do is we want to rather add 10 to the total. So we can say total plus equals 10. All right. But it's not just if we have a queen, it's also if we have a king or a jack. So we can say or So we can say card details dot value if it equals queen, or if it equals king, or if it equals jack, then increase the total by 10. Okay, and let's see the total change. Console.log total. Right. So so now when we get our king, now the total is increased by 10. And we got another king, so then it's increased to 20. Okay, still not counting these cards, but we'll get to that now. So we can say that else. So if it's not a queen or a jack or a king, then add total plus equals, and then let's have a look what happens if I write card details dot value. We can see what happens. Okay, so now if it's not a jack, queen, or king, then we should be adding card details dot value to our total variable. So if I add 8, I get 08, and then jack, and I get 0810. Okay, well, that's not what I want. I want a number, not a string. So what I need to do there is I need to use parseInt. And that's going to change it from being a string, because if you look here, you can see that that 6 is a string. You'll note the difference in, I'm using Firefox here, that's why it's formatted like this. But you'll notice there that 48, the remaining, is a number. It's highlighted in green, doesn't have quotation marks, whereas 6 has quotation marks and is marked in pink just for me to be able to easily see that it's a string. Okay, so now let's have a look what happens. So jack, right now I've added 10, and then there's 4, so now it's 14, and there's a queen, so now it's 24. And I'll need to handle what happens when I go over 24. But before I get there, we also need to think about what happens with an ace. So it's slightly complicated with an ace. If you get an ace and it's going to take you over 21, then it only counts as a value of 1. But if it's not going to take you over 21, then it counts as a value of 11. All right. So what we can say is that else if card details dot value is equal to ace and total plus 11 is less than equal to 21, then increase total by 11. All right, so I'm checking to see if, firstly, if I have an ace, and then if I do have an ace, is the total plus 11 less than equal to 21? Then you can add 11 to it. Else if it's just an ace, right? Then increase the total by 1. All right. So this catches if the total plus 11 is less than equal to 21, and then If that's not the case, well, then this else if will run here, and you can just add 1 onto the total. Okay, so let's have a look and see what happens now. All right, so queen, 10, jack, 10, and another 10, so you're 30. And now you see that it's only added 1 for my ace, because now the total is not less than equal to 21. So it's just added 1 on there. Okay. If it had been less than equal to 21, then it would have added 11. All right. Now the next thing that I need to do is I need to manage what happens if the total goes over 21. So I can add another if statement here, and I'll say that if total is greater than 21, that I'm going to blur. Let me just, yeah, I'm going to blur the main, right? So there's my main element, and I'm just going to blur that, and that will include my hit me button and the cards here. All right. So what I can do, let me just quickly create an element for my main. And then I'm going to add styling to my main. I'm going to say main.style.filter. And I'm going to set that to have a blur of 4 pixels. And I want to set my message, which has been hidden here. I want it to display. Okay, so I'm going to say here, it's a class of message, and I'll set message.style.display equals block. Okay, so let's see what happens. So we get 10, 16, and now I've gone over 21. I got 26 in total there, and it's given me an error message, and it's or a bust message, and it's given me an option to try again. Okay, currently if I click that, nothing happens. So we need to now handle how to restart the game. And to do that, we need to let's call it try again. And it has a class of try again. And so we can say try again, on click, and we'll run the following function. First, we'll set the total back to 0. We'll set the cards container to be empty. We need to remove that blur, so we'll set main.style.filter equals blur 0 pixels, and we'll hide our message again. So we'll set that now to none, and that should work now. Let's have a look. Right, click hit me. I get 10, 13, 15, oh, 20. All right, so I've gone over, hit 30. You've gone bust. Now if I click try again, it resets the game and I can play again. Don't know why it's giving me these. All right, so there's the ace. And remember, our ace conditional statements are a little bit complicated. So it calculated here. It said that 10, 18. And because 18 plus 10 is going to take me over the threshold of 21, then just make it add 1 onto the total. So it went from 18 to 19. And there, I've gone bust. All right. I think that's all I was going to show. Yes, that's a good point. So you could run out of cards. That's a very good idea. So we haven't actually handled that at all, and I didn't do that in my prep. But you can just call this function again, right? So if you just call that and get a new deck, so then we can just call that function again, and we'd now be working with a new deck. I think that makes sense. So then you hit that, and you're now working with a new deck. And there's our ace as well, right? So there it starts off at 11 and then went to 13. So yeah, that's kind of all I had to show. I don't know if anyone has any questions. Cool. I'm glad you liked it. So cool. Thanks. So the things that kind of to point out really is kind of the events is one thing, the API call, and especially just reading through the docs. The docs usually tell you everything you need to know and what to expect and how to work with the API. And then just conditional statements. I think sometimes students get a bit caught in conditional statements and they don't quite know how to set them up, but you can actually really just speak it out. You can say, okay, so if I have an ace and the total plus 11 would be less than 21, then do this action. You can actually just speak out the else if and usually can quite easily spot it. I didn't say it, but I just note that that is or and that is and in your conditional statements. All right. Anything else? Otherwise, we can wrap up there. All right. Okay. Well, thanks everyone. Thanks for joining. We'll chat soon. If you have ideas for things that you'd like to cover, you're more than welcome to drop me a message and we can chat about it. Mostly my focus kind of in terms of prepping these things is kind of aiming at second semester, first year, so that everyone can kind of get something from it. So hopefully that's useful and hopefully these are useful. So yeah, do let me know. I appreciate any feedback. So that's good. All right, everyone. I hope you have a nice day and we'll chat soon.